Hello and welcome to this new tutorial series, and this time we're going to do something different. In the previous tutorial series I showed you how to create this exterior scene, visualization architectural rendering scene using nothing but 3D Studio Max and V-Ray and no third-party plugins. That's because I wanted you to learn how to use only 3D Studio Max and the tools that are inside 3D Studio Max before I will show you how to use plugins that will make your life easier. So we covered the 3D Studio Max portion, and in this tutorial series I will each lesson show you a different plugin, free plugins for 3D Studio Max and V-Ray that make your life easier in creating architectural scenes. So in this lesson I'll show you the first plugin, which is Forest Pack, and this plugin is used to create scenes with trees and grass and bushes easily. So you can add foliage to your scene easily and without much effort. So I'll show you how to do this on this already made scene that we created in the previous tutorial. If you didn't watch the previous tutorial, I highly recommend you to do so because it's very informative about processes inside 3D Studio Max and how to create architectural scenes. So after we did that, I want to show you how to use this plugin to add grass much easier than we did before. In the previous tutorial we used the V-Ray displacement modifier and textures from the internet to create this grass plane. And the result was this. You have a grass plane which has bumpiness and it looks fairly good. But now you can use the Forest Pack plugin in order to create grass much more easily, and the results may be better. So first thing I want to do is I want to disable what we did in the previous tutorial. So I'm going to delete this V-Ray displacement modifier, right click, delete, and I'm going to give this plane, the grass plane, just a plain base material, gray material. Let's assign it to this plane. Next thing I want to do is add the Forest Pack modifier grass to this plane. So the first limitation of the Forest Light Pack Lite, which is the free version of this plugin, is you can apply grass and bushes and trees only to flat planes. So if your plane has like slopes or it goes in different heights, you cannot add the free Forest Pack plugin to it. But in this example, as you can see, it's almost flat. You have a slope here that we'll fix, but it's almost flat. And in most instances of architectural visualizations of houses like that, you have mostly flat planes, so that's fine. Now let's hide this plane. Hide everything, I'm sorry, except this plane here. Hide unselected. And I'm going to fix this plane so it won't have slopes. So I'm going to go to the front viewport. Let's go back, and this is the plane of our grass. As you can see, it's not completely flat, it's flat here, but it goes down here. So we need to fix that. I'm going to choose the grass plane. It's named grass. I'm going to go to the editable poly, choose vertices, choose these vertices down here. Click on snap toggle so I can snap these vertices to this plane here. And go to select and move on the y-axis only, and snap to this plane here. So now we have a perfectly flat plane. Let's go to perspective viewport. As you can see, it's perfectly flat. And if I unhide everything, let's just delete this plan here that we used to create this visualization. I'm going to delete it, we're not using it anymore. If we go to the camera using the C button, you can see that the flat plane is fine. This slope is not very important. So this is fine, we're going to use this. Next thing I want to do is we have a couple of bushes here. I want to take them up because they were down in the slope. So unselect the snap toggle. Just F3 to see transparently or not. Let's take these bushes up. So I'm going to take them up on top of the plane, like so. This is fine. And the next thing I want to do, C to go to camera. I want to select this plane, right click, hide unselected, and we're left with the plane only. Now I want to go to the editable poly, select the border, which means all the border of this form, and hit create shape from selected. What I'm doing now is I'm creating a shape which is exactly in the same place where this grass plane is. So I'm going to use the linear options, because if you use the smooth option, you will have like a smooth plane. It smooths out all the points, which is not good for us. We need it to go exactly like the grass plane. So just deselect this, select the line you created and delete it. And again, go to editable poly, border, select the border, create shape from selected, hit linear, and hit OK. So now, if I choose this grass plane and I hit right click, hide selection, you will see we're left with only the line that we just created, the shape that we created. I created this shape in order for the forest spec to know exactly where to put the grass. It uses shapes in order to know where to place its objects. So I created this shape, let's call it shape grass, and let's add grass to it. So this is a very simple process. After you installed, go to the site, download the free version, install it on your hard drive, and after you install it, restart 3D Studio Max. You will see in the geometry, in the roll down menu, you will see a new option called IToo software. This is the Forest Pack Lite plugin, essentially. So we're going to use the Forest Lite, hit it, hit in library select. Now you can select what you want to apply to this plane here that we created, to this shape. So I want to apply it, go to presets, go to lawns, because I want to apply a lawn, a grass, and you have 6 versions of lawns in the free version of this plugin. You have much more versions in the paid version, but let's stick with the 6, it's more than enough. Stick with the 6 that we have. Let's choose the Daisies 01 detail as our preset for the grass. This is a great preset. It has small flowers and it has a great lawn to it. So double click on it and then just hit the line that you created. That's it. It created the grass. So you can't see the grass in the viewport, but once you render, you will see it perfectly. It's that simple. In order to create grass, you just create a shape of where the grass is going to go, hit Forest Light, select from the lawn that you need, double click on it, and then just click on the line that you created. That's it. You have the lawn in your scene. Let's go back to camera, unhide everything, just hit no here. You have a couple of objects that Forest Spec Lite uses in order to give you the lawn in your rendering. So they're basically hidden. So when you unhide all, 3D Studio Max asks you, do you want to unhide the layers, the hidden layers that the Forest Spec Lite uses? Just hit no. You don't want to unhide it. You want to unhide everything else. So now you have the grass in your scene. It's that simple. Now let's see. The lawn that we created in the previous tutorial series looked like this. It was a lawn using the displacement modifier. It has a bumpiness to it, and it looks fairly good. But once you add, instead of this method, you use the forest pack, you will get this result. The grass is much more bumpy. You have height to it, and I like it better because it's more variance and it looks more 3D than flat. So this is with the displacement modifier method. This is using the forest pack. I think this method is very simple and very good. So to recap, in order to create a grass, you need to create, it only creates grass on flat planes because this is the free version of this plugin. And you need to go to create a line where you want the grass to go, create the forest light, go to select the from lawns, the lawn that you want, and select the line. That's it, you have grass in your scene. So this is the first part of the forest pack. The next thing I want to show you using the forest pack is how to give some variation to this foliage on this side. If we look on these bushes in the version that we created in the previous tutorial series, you can see that this bush is essentially the same bush that is copied a couple of times. Now I want to give it some variation. In order to give this line of bushes some variation, I'm going to use the forest light pack. So let's go here. You can see all the bushes here. I'm going to select one of these bushes and shift drag them to the side, create a copy of it. So bush for forest, let's call this. Now I'm going to delete, no, before I'm going to delete, I'm going to create the area where I want forest pack to assign the bushes to. So the area is going to be the same area as the bushes here. So I'm going to go to, let's go to shapes, rectangle, and I'm going to create a rectangle where the bushes are going to go in. Hit F3 to see transparently. See the wireframe mode. And this is essentially the area, the same area as the area where the bushes were in the previous tutorial series. Now I'm going to go to the front viewport and take this area up. So it will be in the same height as the grass plane, which is this one. You can also do it in perspective viewport. Just go closer, F3 to see it shaded, and just take the line down until you see it above, a little bit above the grass plane, the gray grass plane. So this area is going to represent the area where I want forest pack to assign the bushes to. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all these bushes from the previous tutorial. And I'm going to select this rectangle, let's call it a bush area line. And I'm going to control select this bush here, bush for forest. Right click, hide unselected, and I'm left with only the area and the bush I want to assign to this area. So first thing I want to for you to remember is when I assign this bush to this area, it needs to be a V-Ray proxy. I explained V-Ray proxies in the previous tutorial series, so go back to that series and watch it. Essentially, V-Ray proxies make it easier for the PC to render the image. So if I take this bush, it has 44,000 polygons. If I copy it like 10 times or more, you will have a scene with 321 polygons already. So the scene becomes very heavy. Control Z to delete it back. So if I want the scene not to be heavy, I'm going to use V-Ray proxies. Essentially, I'm going to create a proxy of this plant, and I can assign it hundreds of times in the scene. And in the rendering time, the computer will only use one bush, so it will not be heavy on the system. Again, a more in-detail description of this can be found in the previous tutorial series, the exterior rendering tutorial series on this channel. For now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a proxy for this bush. In order to create a proxy, right-click, V-Ray Mesh Export, and let's say where this proxy is going to go. So just choose the library where you want this proxy to go, and then make sure it's automatically create proxies is on, and hit OK. Okay, so now this bush is a proxy of this bush. As you can see, it looks a little bit different. It has like sharp edges and things. This is only a representation of this bush in the scene. This bush is essentially in another file. So we created this proxy. Now you can instance this bush, shift instance, as many times as you would like, and it will not be that heavy on the system. So I'm not going to instance it for this tutorial. I'm going to use this proxy of this bush with the forest pack in order to add bushes to this rectangle here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to IToo software, forest light, select. Now I'm not going to use the grass preset because for this example I'm going to go to free models and select this bush because I want to create bushes in this square here. So I'm going to double click on bush and click on the area where I want the bush to go, like so. It will ask me if I want to resize, hit OK. Alright, so now you have a representation in this area of the bushes from the forest pack light. Let's go to modify. And you have one type of bush in this area. So the geometry is only this bush that we selected from the forest pack. Now I want to add another bush to this area. So it will randomly place the bushes, the two types of bushes, next to each other. So in order to add this bush to this area, I'm going to hit on the plus sign, add new item. Now as you can see, it added a new item, but it's not referenced yet, so it looks like a square. In order for this item to be this bush, hit on custom object and hit on none and select this bush here. So now this object is the bush that we created before, and the first object is the bush that came with forest pack light. So you have two bushes which create variation in this area. But okay, so now right click, unhide all, hit no for a hidden object, no. Go to the camera viewport. As you can see, you have only two bushes in this area. I want to create much more bushes in the area of this rectangle. In order to do this, I'm going to go to area inside my forest pack modify list, and in the area, no, distribution map, I'm sorry. Now this map will tell, you know what, go back to Control Z to go back to viewing only like this because it's easier to see. Now when I go to distribution area, it will tell the plugin, the forest pack plugin, how to distribute these two bushes that I placed here in the geometry inside this geometry that I created as an area. So you have the area here, which is the bush area line that we created. You have the two bushes, which represents the bushes that go inside this area. And now I'm going to go to distribution and tell him how to distribute these two bushes inside this area. Now try going along with me. It's a little bit long, but you'll get the hang of it once you start playing with this. So now the distribution in units is 100,000. Let's take it down to 50,000. So now 50,000 centimeters units means that the distribution, this spread map, is smaller inside the area, so you have more bushes. So the smaller this value, the more bushes you will have inside this area. So let's take it down to 2. Alright, so now you have a lot of bushes inside, which is great for us. Now they intersect with each other. They go inside one another, which is fine in most cases. Let's make it even smaller. Let's make this value 1.5. No, I'm sorry. 1.5 without the 0 here. So 1,500. So this is a lot of bushes inside this area. I want them to intersect less with each other. In order to do this, I'm going to go down here into collision, which is inside the distribution still. So I'm going to go to the last thing in the collision and enable collision. You cannot see this in the viewport, only in the render. To see this in the viewport, the effect of the collision, you need to hit this preview in viewport. So hit this. Now as you can see, you have distance between the bushes. Each bush needs a little distance before the next bush. Now this is a lot of distance. This is too much. So the radius, let's make it not 100 but 50%. Now we have less distance between the bushes. Even less. Let's make it 25%, like so. This is fine. So now you have two bushes. Let's recap. you have inside of the geometry two geometries. The bush that comes as a present with the forest spec plugin, and the bush that we added a proxy of, which is this one, that we added using the plus sign. Next thing, there is the area where these two bushes are going to go inside. We created this area using the rectangle tool. So this is the area. Next thing we did, we went to distribution, which tells the program how to distribute the bushes inside the area. And we gave it a value of 1500 units, which made it much more dense. You can use a couple of spread maps that will give you different results, like spread 3 or spread 4. You can just use a couple of them until you find the one that you like the most. The spread one is fine. So this is the preset of the image here, of the spread in the area. And next what we did, gave it a value of smaller value of 1500 to make it thicker with foliage inside. And then we hit the enable collision so the bushes won't collide as much with each other. And in order to see this in the viewport, we hit the preview in viewport option. Now if I go back to camera using the C button and I unhide everything, hit no, you can see the bushes here. Now if I go to the image, I already rendered this image, but once you render it, this is the image with the bushes as they were from the previous tutorial. This is how they are after the forest spec lite. You can see much more variation in the bushes here. You have some of the older bushes, some of the newer bushes, and they are distributed with no... It's random. They use a random algorithm to assign the bushes in places. So it's more real because nature is not mathematical. It's more of a random placement of bushes. So we have a couple of variations here for the bushes. Alright, so this is how you apply bushes using the forest plugin. I hope you understood this one. And the last one, last thing I want to show you using the forest pack plugin is how to assign random trees at the back here. Now, as you can see, the trees that we are assigned in the previous tutorial are fine, but I want a more variation in the trees in the background. So I want more trees at the back, and I want them to rotate randomly and create random heights and things like that. And the forest pack plugin is very nice for that purpose. So what I'm going to do for that purpose is, again, I'm going to create the area using the shape rectangle, the area where I want the trees to go. So let's create the same area that the trees from the previous tutorial were in. So rectangle here and another one here. These are the two areas I want to use. Control select both of them and go to the front viewport, take them up to where the trees are, somewhere here. If I choose one of these proxies that we created and I give it a value of preview from file, I can see, let's show whole mesh. So I can see the whole tree. I can see where the bottom of the trees are. So if I go back to the top, I choose control, choose the second one. Choose these areas, go to the front, take this area down here. So I want the trees to begin from this part here and go up. Once we created the areas, we can delete the trees that were in the previous tutorial, that we created for the previous tutorial, except one tree that I'm going to use as a proxy for this area. So let's delete all of them except one. Alright, this is the tree that I'm going to leave. It's a proxy of that tree. Let's make it a preview from file, so it takes less polygons in the scene. And I'm going to take it to the side because I'm going to use it in conjunction with forest pack lite in order to populate these areas here. I want to make these two areas, you know what, no, let's leave it two areas. I want to show you this option in forest pack. So we have one tree, for this area, I want a couple of models of trees to go in the back area here. So I want this tree that we have in the front also. I'm going to create a copy of this tree, shift move it on the Y and X axis to the side also, create a copy, not an instance, a copy, and I want to create a proxy out of it. So first of all, let's go to this tree. I want to see it in the viewport, so show whole mesh, and I want to make this tree as big as this one, so just make it bigger like so. They're about the same height now, so this is fine. I'm going to hit right click on this tree, hide unselected, and I'm left with this tree only. Group, ungroup the tree. You have 8 objects here. That's because I want to create one editable poly from all these 8 objects of this tree and create a proxy out of it. Again, an explanation of the proxies you can find in the previous tutorial series. So I'm going to select one object of the 8 and attach list and attach the other 7 objects of this tree. Hit OK. Now this tree is one editable mesh. Let's unhide all. Hit no again. Now you have a tree here, but I want this tree to be a proxy like this one. Preview from file, it's fine. I want this to create this as a proxy. So what we did with the bushes, we'll do the same thing here. Right click, view mesh export. Make sure that it saves in the folder you want it to save in. And make sure automatically create proxies is on. And hit OK. You need to wait a couple of seconds while V-Ray converts it to a proxy. And now this tree is a proxy like this one, so it will be easier on the PC to render the scene. So now, if I go to modify again, I can show whole mesh in the scene, and I can preview from file, which saves RAM. Now, we have 2 trees that I'm going to put in these 2 areas here, using the forest pack. And another tree is inside the forest pack itself. So now I want to assign these trees to these areas. In order to do this, we're going to go back to geometry and to the forest lite plugin. Hit select. For this example, I want to use this bonsai pine as a tree at the background. So I'm going to use this bonsai and select the area where I want the bonsai pine to go to. So select it. Hit OK to rescale, which is fine. Now if I go to the front viewport, you can see that the trees are very, very small. So I need to make them bigger, as big as these trees. In order to make them bigger, I'm going to go to the selecting the forest plugin we just created, the trees essentially. I'm going to go to the bonsai pine, and in this geometry there is a scale option which is 100% now. If I make it 1000%, it's way taller than the trees, so I need to make it like 800%, maybe 750, like so. This is fine. So now you have distribution of the trees in this area here. I want to apply this distribution to this area also. In order to do this, I'm going to go down in the forest pack, in the modify panel of the forest pack to area, and I'm going to add an area, add a new spline area. And this spline, now I'm going to select the new area, this one. Now you have 2 areas where the forest pack will distribute the trees to. So you have the first one and the second one. You can add up to 3 areas in the free version. But you can also take the spline, convert it to editable spline, and just attach this area to the spline. So now you have one spline, one area. So you don't have this restriction of how many areas to add. But this is fine. You have one area here and one area here, and you assign the trees to these areas. Next thing I want to do is I want to assign these 2 trees to these areas also, because I want more variation in my trees. So I'm going to go to geometry in the forest spec modified panel, add new item, and add new item again. I'm adding 2 items now. So in the first item, I'm going to go to custom item, hit on none, and select the first tree. So now we have the first tree distributed randomly. And in the second new item, I'm going to go to custom object, hit on none, and choose the second tree. Alright, so now we have a lot of trees distributed in our areas using the forest spec, but they intersect with each other too much. So now I need to go down to, as before with the bushes, to the distribution map. I'm going to go down in the distribution map to collision, enable collision, and preview in viewport. Now as you can see, you have much less trees. And the radius is 100%. Let's make it less than 100%, like 50%. So now you have a distribution, nice distribution of the trees. If you want more trees or less trees, again, take this unit value down for more trees or up for less trees. So if I make it 1000 or 10,000, no, 1000, it has more trees distributed inside our squares. And I'm going to take the collision up to 75, so we have a little bit less trees, maybe 65. This is fine. And now if I go to the camera viewport, you can see the trees at the back are distributed randomly. So you have 3 types of trees in these areas. Last thing I want to show you, a couple of things, is a transform option inside the forest spec plugin. Once you hit the trees here and you go to modifier panel, you will have all these panels, the distribution which we touched on, and you have the geometry and the areas, and you have also another menu here which is called the transform. If you open it, you will see the rotation value, so you can randomly rotate the object by how many degrees you want. So you can rotate this way. The forest spec will rotate each tree randomly from -5 degrees to +5 degrees. If you want more randomness in the rotation of the trees, so the trees will look different from each other, you can up these values to -25, let's say, to +25. So now you can't see it in the viewport. No, you can. I'm sorry. You need to enable the rotation in order for this to take effect. So I'm going to enable it. And now you can see random rotations in the trees that from -25 to +25, which is way too much. Let's make it from 10 degrees, -10 degrees to +10 degrees. And you have a rotation here on the y-axis, which means on the side. So if we have 25, it bends to the side. It's way too much, -5 and +5, so -2, +2. And from the z-axis, 359, let's make it 5. Let's see what, yeah. So you don't want it to fall down, the trees to fall down, so let's make it -10 to +25, like so. So now the trees are rotated randomly. Let's apply the same thing. Let's go put back to this bush modifier. So forest, let's call it forest bushes. And in the modify list, let's go back down to transform and enable the translation for the rotation. So now the bushes will rotate randomly also, and each bush will face another direction, which make a variation in the rotation of this. So this is fine. Let's go back to the trees. We have the rotation enabled. If you enable the translation, the trees will move on the sides. We don't need to enable this. The rotation is fine. You can also enable the scale. So each tree will scale a little bit differently. Some trees will be higher and some will be shorter, like in real life. So in order to enable this, just enable the scale. And as you can see, it's way too much scaling. Let's make it 105, and the minimum is 50. So you have some trees that are smaller, some trees that are bigger. And this will create a variation in our trees here. So let's recap this again. Sorry, I'm recapping everything all the time, but I want you to understand how it works. So it's better to go slowly and understand it. The geometry controls which geometries you want to put in a specific area. In our example, we put 3 kinds of trees inside. So you have the bonsai tree, which comes with the forest pack. You have the first proxy and the second proxy of these trees. The next rollout is area. Here you specify where you want these 3 trees to be placed. So we created 2 rectangles. So we added 2 areas where the trees are aligned and placed. Next thing is the distribution, which means how many trees you want in a specific area. So the lower this value here in units, the more trees you will have. And inside the distribution also you have the collision here, which means that the trees will not collide with each other. The trees will have a space to breathe between one tree to another. And the amount of space to breathe is assigned by this radius value. So the more radius you have, the less trees you have, the more distance between trees you have. So 65 was fine. And the next thing was transform. So here you can choose random rotations of the trees or of the objects. So the objects won't look like one and the other. And it will have randomly generated from the value you want to minimum to maximum. You can also assign this to scale. Don't forget to enable these rotations to scale, so the trees will scale down and up randomly from 50 to 105%, and the trees will be shorter and taller randomly, which is like in real life. So the last thing I want to show you in the forest pack tutorial is the material. Each tree is a little bit different in color in nature. In order to represent this and give variations to the trees or bushes or whatever you use in the forest pack lite, you can go to the material rollout and assign what color tint you want to give the trees. So this this basic color tint that they give you is a yellowish reddish hue, like in the autumn. So this is fine for us. Now the strength of the randomness of the color of the trees is assigned here from 0 to 0. So for now you don't have variation in color from tree to tree. I'm going to give it randomness of 0 to 10%. So now the colors are a little bit different from tree to tree randomly. In order to generate this difference in colors, hit inside the material rollout after you assign how much percent of this reddish tint you want to give the variation of trees. Assign the optimize materials and hit optimize. Do you want to continue? Yes. Once this line is full in blue, this means the plugin finished its work, and now you have some trees more reddish than the others, and you have variation in the trees at the back now. That's it for the trees in the back. And I want to show you the difference. So as you can see, you have the trees that we created in the previous tutorial, and now these are the trees that I assigned using the forest pack lite. You have more variation in the trees at the back. The trees are rotating randomly, and it's more of a natural feel. So the first photo was this one, and after forest pack lite with the trees and bushes and grass, you have this photo here. Alright, so this is the first tutorial in this series. If you want to learn more about this plugin, the forest pack, there's a scene here that I created, a huge scene of a lot of trees using the forest pack modifier plugin. You have trees here and bushes and things like that. If you want to learn more about this plugin, you have great tutorials on their website. Just go to tutorials, forest pack, and you will have a lot of tutorials how to create grass and parking lot cars and grass and bushes and trees and everything you would like to know. Thank you for watching. In the next tutorial I will show you more plugins that I use, and please subscribe. Thanks and goodbye.